gods of rock and roll, a man who paved the way for the carefree and breakout behavior of the 70s. His music would define a generation, and the things he could do with a guitar would shake the heavens themselves, and this was the last picture taken of him. This guy was so legendary that there were several rumors created about this rock icon, most of them related to his music career and his habitual partying. People said he used to put acid in his headband when he went out to play. Eventually he would start to sweat and the LSD would seep into his skin, and he would be on a wild ride of psychedelics while playing in front of thousands of people. I can't even imagine what that experience would have been like. There's also talk that he wrote the whole song Purple Haze about an LSD trip, but the official statement is that it was a dream. But unfortunately his partying lifestyle eventually caught up with him. Jimi Hendrix was found dead on the floor of a hotel room after he asphyxiated on his own vomit. This was caused by a cocktail of drugs and alcohol that he had taken, and then he would join the infamous 27 Club.
Coming in at number 9, we have John F. Kennedy. But guys, before I go any further, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel because it really helps us out. Also, hit that bell notification so you never miss an upload from us. Thank you. Alright, so this photo was one of the last photos of John F. Kennedy. It was taken just before his assassination in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. In the photo, you can see President Kennedy in his car waving to the audience. A little while later at 12:30 p.m. he was shot in the head and died instantly. This may be one of the last photos of him, but someone managed to capture his very last moments on film. Abraham Zapruder was filming Kennedy while this all went down, and got every gory detail on camera. That's extremely sad.
Coming in at number 8, we have Carrie Fisher. She was the first love for so many nerds out there. Every kid growing up in the 80s remembers Princess Leia in a bronze bikini being kept by the disgusting Jabba the Hutt. But Carrie Fisher will always be remembered because she's one of the most important parts of the biggest movie franchise in the world. And she's had a pretty amazing career, but eventually old age will get all of us. This was the last picture taken of the famous actress. A fan stopped her in the street and asked her for a picture, and the kind soul that she is, she obliged. The next day she would be on a plane, and partway through the flight she started to experience some chest pains. Fisher was experiencing a heart attack in the air. The pilot landed and she was rushed to the hospital, but she would pass away 4 days later.
In our 7th spot, we have Sharon Tate. These beautiful photos of Sharon Tate were taken a couple of days before she was brutally murdered by the Manson family. In the photo, she was 8.5 months pregnant with her first child. You can see her posing for photos with her baby bump showing proud. A couple days later, on August 8th, Manson ordered his cult followers to go to the home that Sharon was renting and have everyone there gruesomely murdered. Why? Well, some say it's because the home's previous owner, a music producer, Terry Melcher, pissed off Charles by not giving him a recording contract. It's just sad that Sharon had to die like that, and so young. Had they rented a different house, things may have been different.
Coming in at number 6, we have Patrick Swayze. Patrick Swayze was the man of his day. Roadhouse, Dirty Dancing, Point Break, Red Dawn, Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko! Sorry.
All those movies.
Great movie.
Great movie. He was not only one of the biggest stars of his generation, but he was also a heartthrob and known for being in incredible shape. That's why the news of his sickness shook the world so hard. Patrick Swayze would be diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and step away from film because of how ill he was. This was the last photo ever taken of him. It's wild to see this guy like this, since he used to be known for having a rock solid body, but he's withered away. It really makes you see how devastating cancer can be to a person. On the brighter side, his last moments were spent with his family, which is how I'm sure he wanted to spend them.
Coming in at number 5, Richie Edwards. A big name in the late 80s and 90s, Richie Edwards was a moody and talented musician with a passion for angsty lyrics and a habit of extremely disturbing publicity stunts. For example, once a journalist alluded to the fact that he and his band were posers and not sincere punk rockers, and so Edward grabbed a razor and carved "For Real" into his arm. During his rise to fame, Edwards was very candid about his struggles with mental health and self-harm and routinely romanticized the perfect disappearance. But still, no one actually ever thought he would try to plot his own. Although no one knows the truth behind his 1995 disappearance, there are definitely some strange facts surrounding it. Firstly, Weekly, he had been due to fly from Wales to the US for a promotional tour for his new album, The Holy Bible. But 2 weeks prior to his disappearance, it was discovered he withdrew £200 from his account every day. Then, the night before he vanished, he left a gift addressed to his on-again, off-again girlfriend with a note saying, "I love you." Lastly, the morning of his flight, he checked out of his hotel at 7 a.m., leaving behind his suitcase, and his car was later found near the Severn Bridge that connects England and Wales. He was never seen again. At first, it was suspected he could have taken his own life since they found his car by a bridge, but no body was ever found and no trace of Edwards was ever recovered. Next up at number 4 is Michael Rockefeller. Son of the famous and incredibly wealthy New York governor, in 1961, Michael decided to venture out to the remote Poignant village of the Asmat people in South Papua, Indonesia. The purpose of his trip was to collect primitive art around New Guinea, hoping to curate enough to bring back a collection to his family's museum in New York. However, in November of 1961, while sailing about 3 miles from the shore in his double pontoon boat along with his residential anthropologist he'd brought along on the journey, it suddenly capsized, leaving Michael and his friend with no other choice but to attempt to swim to shore. During his likely unwelcome visit to the remote area, Michael believed he had made friends with several of the local tribes, and it's said that Michael called out to them for help, but no one really knows what exactly happened to him, as he was never seen again. Some say he never made it to shore and drowned trying to get to land, while one author, Carl Hoffman, revisited the exact location where Michael traveled all those years ago, and according to the locals he spoke with, they said, quote, "On the shore, he saw familiar faces, those of the Poignant warriors. Instead of the rescue Rockefeller hoped for, he was stabbed in the ribs by one of the men, fatally in the precise actions of ritualistic headhunting and consumed by the warriors." However, as there is no proof of his death and no remains have ever been found, the truth is still up for debate. Coming in at number 3 is Lord Lucan. Unlike the others on this list, Lord Lucan, also known as John Bingham, was not really a victim of his circumstances, but rather a kind of evil guy that seemed to manage disappearing from the public eye forever. It all started back in 1974 when he bludgeoned his wife Veronica to death in her London home after she divorced him and won custody of the kids. Or at least that is who he thought he. After the deed had been done, Lucan was shocked to discover it was their nanny who lay dead on his floor. His wife, who was home at the time, called down for the nanny, and after not hearing a reply, went to the kitchen only to be attacked by a man she quickly figured out was her husband. She fought him off, managing to get him to stop after allegedly saying she would help him escape. That night, Lord Lucan called his mother, asking her to pick up the children as there had been a terrible catastrophe and someone had attacked Veronica. Where he made this call from is unknown, but from there he drove to a friend's house, and that was the last time there was a confirmed sighting. There's a few different theories around what happened to Lucan, one being that he took his own life in New Haven Harbor, while others believe he went into hiding somewhere in Africa. The strangest theory, however, is that his friends convinced him to take his own life and then fed his remains to tigers at a private zoo in Kent. However, in reality, no one knows what happened to the man, and his body has never been found. Next up at number 2, Jody Huisentruit. Somewhat of a local celebrity in Iowa, Jody became well known thanks to her time as a news anchor. However, sadly in 1995, Jody disappeared and has never been found. At about 4 a.m. on June 27, 1995, Jody's producer realized she was not in for her morning broadcast. This was not like Jody, and so her producer called her to check up on her. When she got the call, Jody profusely apologized, saying she had slept through her alarm and was on her way over. But 2 hours went by and Jody had still not turned up. So her producer filled in for her in the morning show and then promptly contacted authorities at 7 a.m. When officers arrived at her apartment, they found her car as well as evidence that suggested a struggle near the car. Even worse was that they discovered an unidentified handprint on the car, but tragically, no more evidence of this case ever surfaced. Believed to have been abducted, no one knows where Jody could be or if she is alive, but her case remains an active investigation. Last up in our number #1 spot is Jean Spangler. Back in the 1940s, while on the rise of Hollywood stardom, young actress Jean Spangler suddenly disappeared not only from the spotlight, but seemingly from existence altogether. On October 7th, 1949, Jean left her home in LA around 5 p.m., leaving her daughter with her sister-in-law and telling her she was heading to her ex-husband's house to discuss a late child support payment before she headed to work to film a night shoot. 2 hours later, she called the house saying that the shoot was going to take the full 8 hours and not to expect her home that evening. The next morning, Sophia, her sister-in-law, woke up and upon discovering that Jean was still not home from work, grew worried and filed a missing persons report. Once the investigation began, it was discovered that despite telling her family she was working the whole night, she was never at the studio filming the night of her disappearance. Even more peculiar is that a woman at a local farmer's market claimed to have spotted Jean browsing around 6 p.m. looking like she was waiting for someone. 2 days later, police found her purse with a strange note inside that read, "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while mother is away." Neither the mysterious Kirk or Dr. Scott were able to be found, and no one in Jean's family knew who she was speaking of. However, there was speculation that Kirk could have been Hollywood star Kirk Douglas. Still, despite a nationwide search, no further evidence on the case has ever been brought forward, but it remains open and she remains a missing person to this day.
Coming in at number 10 is Michael Rockefeller. Michael Rockefeller, the son of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, was 23 when he began dabbling in art collecting and travel photography. In November 1961, he traveled to the jungles of New Guinea to spend time with the native Asmat tribes when he went missing. Now, despite a 2-week search and a witness who supposedly saw him swimming in the ocean, his body was never found. His official cause of death was noted as drowning, but conspiracy theories range from being kidnapped to going native to even being eaten by sharks. Another big theory is that he was eaten by people, as the Asmat tribes were involved in that practice and they sometimes ended people's lives as a part of rituals. It's also been said that his boat overturned near the Asmat region of the island and he swam to shore to look for help, and that's when he was attacked, as nobody ever saw him again. There have been some members of local tribes who've told stories indicating that Michael's life was ended upon reaching the shore, and that his body was cut up and the parts were handed out as gruesome trophies. Regardless of how or what happened, it will forever remain a mystery. Number 9. Prime Minister Harold Holt. On December 17, 1967, Harold Holt, the Prime Minister of Australia, disappeared while swimming in the sea. His last photo of him is him actually swimming. He was with others and he knew the area well, and he had swum there many times before, but it seems like he swam into deeper water and was dragged out to sea. The others called out to him, but he did not raise his arms or cry for help. He soon slipped under the waves and was out of sight. The Victoria Police were contacted and initiated what became one of the largest search operations in Australian history. The entire Australian Defence Force was put on high alert, and an enormous search operation was mounted in and around the beach with helicopters, watercrafts, police divers, and 2 naval diving teams, and more than 340 people were involved in the search. Strangely, his body was never recovered, and it is generally agreed that his disappearance was a simple case of accidental drowning, but a number of conspiracy theories surfaced since. A 1968 story in the Sunday Observer claimed that Harold had been assassinated by the US Central Intelligence Agency, supposedly because he intended to pull Australia out of Vietnam. Also, suggestions were made that Harold had his life ended by the North Vietnamese after being incapacitated by a nerve agent, or that he had faked his own life to be with a lover. In 1983, British journalist Anthony Gray claimed that Harold was a lifelong spy for the People's Republic of China. According to Anthony, Harold faked his own death to defect to China and was collected by frogmen who dragged him into a waiting submarine. Yeah. Now, regardless of what actually happened to him, this disappearance was extremely strange, and it seems like we'll never get answers.
Number 8. Bison Dele. Before he changed his name, Bison Dele was basketball player Brian Williams, a 6'11" mountain of a man who was an amazing player in the NBA. He then quit sports and soon left the States at age 30. He stayed away from the US for years, raising hell in Australia, where he learned to sail and bought himself a boat named the Hakuna Matata. He decided he was going to sail it clear from Tahiti to Hawaii. On July 7, 2002, Bison set sail with his girlfriend Serena Carlin, the ship's captain Bertrand Saldo, and his older brother Miles DeBoard. The last known photo is of him and Serena on Bora Bora Beach. Now, unfortunately, the group never made it to Hawaii as Bison, his girlfriend, and the captain vanished at sea. 2 months later, though, his brother Miles was arrested in Phoenix trying to buy gold with one of his brother's checks. Released on bail, he ended his own life, and it was suspected that he ended the lives of all three on board the ship, as he was allegedly a bitter guy who was prone to violence and envied his brother's success. It's said he most likely ended their lives and dumped their bodies in the Pacific. Now, to this day, their bodies have never been found. Number 7. Hale Boggs. At the time he went missing, Hale Boggs was one of the most famous politicians in America. A Democrat from New Orleans, Hale had sat on the Warren Commission investigating JFK's assassination before becoming House Majority Leader during the Nixon years. He was thought to be an alcoholic, and he became famous for doubting the lone gunman theory in the JFK shooting. Now, Hale Boggs was kinda a big deal in 1972, hence the nationwide shock when he disappeared. On October 16th that year, he was in Alaska helping a fellow congressman's re-election bid. The two got on a light aircraft heading for remote Juneau, and they were never seen again. The weather was terrible that day, and as soon as Hale failed to show in Juneau, everyone guessed what had probably happened: they crashed. What was then the biggest search operation in US history was launched, with 90 planes searching 325,000 square miles of Alaska. But no trace of the missing aircraft or its occupants was ever found. To this day, there are some people out there who think Hale was assassinated for his work investigating the JFK assassination. Number 6. Scott Smith. Canadian band Loverboy was one of the biggest rock bands of the early 80s, and Scott Smith was a founding member, staying with the group all the way until his mysterious and frightening disappearance at sea on November 30th, 2000. After playing with his band in Vancouver, BC, Scott, two friends, and his girlfriend set out to Mexico on their 37-foot sailboat. As they sailed down the coast and neared San Francisco, the weather got rough, and one of them estimated that a wave to be around 20 feet high knocked Scott off the deck of the vessel and into the water. Coast Guard helicopters arrived within 20 minutes and dispatched 2 search boats, which scoured a 133 square mile area to no avail. When fog and continuing high waves ended that search, Scott's family paid for a private search by a San Francisco company, and that too proved fruitless. Now, to this day, his remains have never surfaced.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Elvis Presley. In this photo taken on August 16th, 1977, we see Elvis Presley driving home after just visiting his dentist. Little did we know that later that day he would be found dead in his bathroom by his girlfriend. Look at him driving home unaware that he was going to die shortly after. Now, apparently his death is due to heart failure from ongoing drug abuse, but it's also thought that maybe the codeine pills that the dentist gave him had something to do with his death. He was known to have a mild allergy to codeine. It's thought that maybe that drug just pushed him over the edge that day. Had he not been to the dentist, maybe things would have been different.
Coming in at number 4, we have Prince. We are back again with one of the best rock stars of all time. Prince will go down as one of the best musicians on earth. He could literally play everything. Dave Grohl was once asked if he thought that Prince was a better musician than him, and he said, "Dude, Prince is a better drummer than me." That's how good Prince is. Not to mention his persona. He was a character that was so uniquely him, we probably won't see someone like Prince around for a very long time. I think a few of you out there remember the Dave Chappelle sketch about Prince.
This bores me. Is anyone up for a game of basketball?
Apparently this guy could ball seriously as well, which is nuts. But Prince's intense lifestyle eventually caught up with him. He started having serious health problems. People say that from performing nearly every night and wearing high heels constantly, he developed terrible hip and back problems. This led to him eventually needing serious painkillers to function, and this sadly led to an overdose. This was the last picture of him alive.
In our third spot, we have Princess Diana. This photo was taken on August 31st, 1997, just before Diana died in a car crash. In the photo taken by paparazzi, we can see Diana in the car with her rumored boyfriend. Moments after the picture was taken, the intoxicated driver lost control of the car and crashed into a pillar. The driver and her boyfriend died instantly. Diana suffered from a concussion, broken arm, cut thigh, and massive chest injuries. She died later in the hospital as a result. It's so sad. No one ever thought that this was going to happen to them. Especially Diana, who got into the car thinking she was going to arrive at her destination safely. Coming in at number 2, we have Steve Irwin, otherwise known as the Crocodile Hunter. Steve was known for wrestling crocodiles and getting up close and personal with other dangerous creatures. The last photos taken of him were by tourists on September 4th, 2006. They saw him filming a documentary and stopped to take photos. One of the photos caught Steve waving to his fans. A little while later, Steve would die after a stingray's barb pierced through his chest. What's even more scary is that his last words were, "I'm dying." That is so heartbreaking to think about.
Coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Martin Luther King, one of the greatest men who ever lived. Martin Luther King fought tirelessly to push America towards a world of equality, to make the USA a place where people from every race could work side by side and didn't need to worry about the color of their skin. It's because of him and other people like him that we have the Civil Rights Act. On April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King was set to appear in Tennessee to talk about how black factory workers were being paid substantially less than their white co-workers for the same job. This was the last picture of him taken. Not long after this picture was taken, Martin Luther King was assassinated. He would be shot on the balcony, all because he thought that people of different races should be treated equally. We talk about people like this now so we don't forget what they've done for us.
Starting off this countdown, we have the helicopter crash. In 2019, 32-year-old Benno Anthony Penna and his wife, Megan Michelle Hawk Penna, went out for a helicopter ride in Utah. Their plan was to fly to South Valley Region Airport in West Jordan. Their ETA was 2 p.m. When the pair failed to arrive, helicopters were sent out looking for them. Shortly before 6:30 p.m. that day, their helicopter was found. Sadly, they had crashed. This photo was posted just a few minutes before the deadly crash. Look how happy the pair look. Little did they know what was soon to happen. Now, authorities don't know for sure what happened, but it was reported that there was some heavy weather in the area that day. So maybe that's what played a role in the crash. It's a very tragic story. In our 9th spot, we have the drowning. On November 11th, 2017, fans of the Filipino TV star and dancer Franco Hernandez were heartbroken when they heard the news of his passing. On that day, he was out with his girlfriend and some friends on a small boat. This photo was taken that day just before a wave hit their boat, knocking everyone overboard into the water. Sadly, Franco drowned. The people operating the boat did manage to pull him and his girlfriend back onto the boat, but by that time he was already unconscious. He was immediately brought to a clinic but was declared dead on arrival. This is so sad because everyone was out enjoying their day, having fun. Little did they know what was going to happen. Moving on to number 8, we have the day the music died. February 3rd, 1959 is also referred to as the day the music died, because on that day, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. Richardson died in a plane crash. The three had been on tour together. That day, they boarded the plane and were headed out to the next stop on their tour, but the three men and their pilot never made it. Now the thing is, the trio had been taking a tour bus for the first half of the tour, but they said it was unreliable and freezing cold, so being fed up, they decided to take a charter plane. Had they continued on with the tour bus, they would have made it there alive. This photo was taken of the three artists right before they hopped on the plane. It's the last photo of them. Apparently, the pilot was unaware of a weather advisory that had been issued before takeoff. A short while after liftoff, the plane ran into troubles and crashed. Apparently, the scene of the crash was very gruesome. The three artists had been thrown from the plane in the crash. The pilot was trapped inside of the cockpit. Coming in at number 7, we have the cliff jumping. Several years ago, Naval Air crewman Shannon Nunez decided to take a celebratory jump at a popular cliff jumping spot in Hawaii. She was celebrating her recent qualifications as a Naval Air crewman. Jumping off this cliff was quite common in the area, but it's also very dangerous. The cliff is roughly 80 feet high. She took this photo before her jump. Little did she know what was going to happen. When she jumped, she ended up landing sideways. She then started to panic and drowned. Her two friends that were with her tried to save her, but it was far too late. She was so excited for this jump. She was so proud of herself and her accomplishments. It's just sad that it had to end this way for her. Coming in at number 6, we have the falling rock. This photo features a group of individuals who went out hiking. Little did they know what was going to happen a few moments later. Literally minutes after this photo was taken, a rock above fell and hit the man on the far right in the red shirt. It crushed him completely. He was dead upon impact. All his friends witnessed this happen to him, and that must have been traumatizing. Like, it was such a freak accident.
Number 5. Joe Pitchler. In the late 90s and early 2000s, child and teen actor Joe Pitchler appeared in a series of small and supporting roles in a number of movies and TV shows, most notably as Brennan Newton in the Beethoven family film franchise. Now, according to the Charlie Project, Joe spoke with a friend at about 4 a.m. on January 5th, 2006, in his northeastern Washington hometown of Bremerton. A few weeks before his 19th birthday, he left his apartment untouched, unlocked, and with the lights on, and apparently only took his wallet and car keys before he disappeared without telling anyone where he might be going, apart from some poems that spoke to his depressing mindset. 4 days later, Joe's Toyota Corolla was located in Bremerton, and authorities suspected that Joe may have jumped to his death off a bridge over the Port Madison Narrows, but no evidence of that nor his remains were ever recovered. Number 4. Patrick McDermott. Patrick McDermott worked as a cinematographer on a handful of short films in the 2000s, but he was far more well known for his personal life, as he was involved romantically with Olivia Newton-John on and off. According to the Telegraph, Patrick was on board a Mexico-bound chartered fishing boat called the Freedom of California in June 2005, but didn't make it back with the ship. Philip Klein, a private investigator hired by the NBC investigative news show Dateline to find the 48-year-old cameraman, theorized in 2009 that Patrick faked his death and vanished as to cancel out substantial debts and to allow his son to cash in on a $150,000 life insurance policy. Philip firmly believed that Patrick was alive, citing 17 credible reported sightings, many of them from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, the last place Patrick was seen alive. Now, according to the CBC, another investigation ruled that Patrick had likely drowned in the Pacific Ocean. However, in November 2017, the Australian magazine New Idea and other tabloids published pictures purporting to be Patrick alive and well, but a Canadian man named Wes Staub refuted that claim, proving that he was the guy in the photos, not Patrick. So, is he well and alive? No one seems to know. Number 3. Amelia Earhart. In the 1930s, Amelia Earhart was an American hero and one of the most famous people on the planet. In 1932, according to the National Women's History Museum, Amelia became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean unaccompanied, and she was awarded the Cross of the French Legion of Honor and the American Distinguished Flying Cross, among other achievements. In 1937, she set out on a journey that would prove ambitious and mysterious. She aimed to be the first woman to fly all the way around the globe. Alongside her navigator Fred Noonan, she departed Miami on June 1st, and by July 2nd they made it to New Guinea with plans to hit Howland Island, a small uninhabited landmass between Hawaii and Australia. Now, sometime en route, Amelia, dealing with poor weather and low fuel, lost contact with a Coast Guard liaison. Her plane never landed and it was never discovered, nor were Amelia or Fred, despite a giant Coast Guard and Navy search effort that encompassed 250,000 square miles. Now, her last photo was done by a photo shoot she did days before she disappeared. Number 2. Richie Edwards. Manic Street Preachers guitarist and songwriter Richie Edwards disappeared without a trace in February 1995 when he was 27 years old. He was due to fly to the United States on a promotional tour of the Holy Bible. Although there were several theories about his disappearance, his highly publicized drug and alcohol use led people at the time to believe that he died by taking his own life, but the investigation itself has received criticism. In his 1990 1999 book, Everything, a book about Manic Street preachers, Simon Price states that aspects of the investigation were far from satisfactory. He asserts that police may not have taken Edward's mental state into account when prioritizing his disappearance, and also records Edward's sister Rachel as having hid out at police handling after CCTV footage was analyzed 2 years after Edwards vanished. Price records a member of the investigation team as stating that the idea you could identify someone from that is errant nonsense. While his family had the option of declaring him legally dead from 2002 onwards, they chose not to for many years, and his status remained open as a missing person until November 23, 2008, when he officially became presumed dead, but according to the police, Edwards is still considered a missing person. And coming in at number 1 is Sean Flynn. Photojournalist Sean Flynn went missing while abroad in the 70s. Sean, who was 28 at the time, and a group of journalists were in Ho Chi Minh City, then called Saigon, for a government press conference when a fellow reporter claimed he got a tip that the Viet Cong, a communist movement and United Front organization, were nearby. According to reports, Sean and photographer Dana Stone chose to travel on motorcycles instead of the limousines that the majority of the other journalists were using for traveling. Night reporter Steve Bell took the last known photo of the pair as they decided to walk on foot near the forest line where the checkpoint was to check it out, and the pair were never seen again. Now, 4 other international journalists were kidnapped by the Viet Cong on the same day, April 6, 1970, but Sean and Dana were never found. His mother spent a lot of her fortune searching for her son, who was legally declared dead in 1984. Coming in at number 10 is John Lennon. John Lennon was an English singer, songwriter, musician, and peace activist who achieved worldwide fame as founder, co-writer, and co-lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist of The Beatles. As a performer, writer, and co-writer, John had 25 #1 singles in the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Rolling Stone ranked him the 5th greatest singer and the 38th greatest artist of all time. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1997 and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, as a member of the Beatles in 1988 and as a solo artist in 1994. At approximately 5 p.m. on December 8, 1980, John autographed a copy of Double Fantasy for Mark David Chapman before leaving the Dakota with Yoko Ono for a recording session at the record plant. In this photo, you can see him signing the autograph, and hours later, John returned to the Dakota in a limo at around 10:50 p.m. They left the vehicle and walked through the archway of the building, and Mark then assassinated John, injuring him twice in the back and twice in the shoulder at close range. John was rushed in a police cruiser to the emergency room of the Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival at 11:15 p.m., and he died at 40 years old. Number 9. Candy Darling was an American actress, best known as a Warhol superstar and transgender icon. She starred in Andy Warhol's films Flesh and Women in Revolt, and was a muse of the Velvet Underground. In this photo, Candy Darling is on her deathbed, taken shortly before she died of lymphoma on March 21, 1974. In a letter written on her deathbed and intended for Andy Warhol and his followers, she said, "Unfortunately, before my death, I had no desire left for life. I am just so bored by everything. You might say bored to death. Did you know I couldn't last? I always knew it. I wish I could meet you all again." She passed away at just 29 years old. Number 8. Paul Walker. Paul Walker was an American actor. He was known for his role as Brian O'Connor in the Fast and Furious franchise. This is a photo of Paul Walker taken while he was leaving a charity event. On November 30th, 2013, moments later, in this red Porsche, driven by Roger Rhodes, crashed into a concrete lamppost and caught fire, killing both men. Roger died of multiple trauma, while Paul died from the combined effects of trauma and burns. Both of their bodies were burned beyond recognition, and Paul was only 40 years old. No alcohol or other drugs were found in either man's system, and neither mechanical failure nor road conditions appeared to play a role. The car's speed was between 80 to 93 miles per hour, aka 130 to 150 kilometers per hour, and the age of the tires were the primary reason behind it. Now, the curve where both men died is a popular spot for drifting cars. Number 7. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was a singer and actress. Nicknamed The Voice, she is one of the best-selling music artists of all time, with sales of over 200 million records worldwide. She's the only artist to have had 7 consecutive #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100, including 2 Emmy Awards, 6 Grammy Awards, 16 Billboard Music Awards, and 28 Guinness World Records, as well as induction into the Grammy, Rhythm and Blues Music, and Rock and Roll Halls of Fame. Whitney struggled with addiction problems and she went to rehab for them. This photo shows Whitney Houston seen leaving True Hollywood Club 2 days before her death. On February 11, 2012, Whitney was found unconscious in Suite 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, submerged in the bathtub. Toxicology results revealed the presence of prescription and non-prescription drugs in her system, and the manner of death was listed as an accidental drowning. She passed away at age 48. Number 6. Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy, also known by the nickname Bobby, was an American lawyer and politician who served as the 64th United States Attorney General from January 1961 to September 1964, and as a U.S. Senator from New York from January 1965 until his assassination in June 1968. He was, like his brothers John and Edward, a prominent member of the Democratic Party and has come to be viewed as some historians as an icon of modern American liberalism. This photo of Robert Kennedy was taken moments after his assassination at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles by Sirhan Sirhan on June 5, 1968. He died early the next morning, and after his arrest, Sirhan said, "I can explain it, I did it for my country." Sirhan said he was motivated to assassinate Kennedy by his support for Israel during the 1967 Six-Day War. Robert died at age 42 years old.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Burning Man Festival. The Burning Man Arts and Music Festival is an annual festival that takes place in the Black Rock Desert of Nevada. Tens of thousands of people gather from all over the world for it. Its main attraction is this big effigy that is then lit on fire. Well, during the festival in 2017, a man named Aaron Joel Mitchell ran right into the burning structure. He was burnt alive. To this day, his family does not know why he did this. He was not depressed, nor was he having thoughts of taking his own life. On top of that, a toxicology report showed that he did not have any alcohol or drugs in his system. But Aaron decided to dodge security and then run straight into the flames. Firefighters tried to stop him, but they were unsuccessful. When they did retrieve his body, it was far too late. This is the last photo ever taken of him. It's the moment he took his own life by running straight into the flames. In our 4th spot today, we have the birthday murder. On December 17th, 2017, 21-year-old Ismael Gutierrez and his friends went out for dinner to celebrate his 21st birthday. This photo was taken at his birthday celebration. Gutierrez is the young man holding the bottle. Later that night at around 3 a.m. he had been shot along with a random female. The group had been at the wrong place at the wrong time. Gutierrez and the woman were both taken to the hospital, but sadly he did not make it. And the fact that this happened on his birthday when he just wanted to have a good time makes it 10 times sadder. In our 3rd spot we have the cabin fire. A couple of years ago, Bethany and her friends decided to go to a cottage. They spent the day out on the lake and then had a nice barbecue dinner. This photo was taken of Bethany out enjoying her time at the cabin. Sadly, 6 hours after this photo was taken, Bethany lost her life. An ember from the grill sparked a fire on the cabin deck. Soon, the whole cabin went up in flames. All the friends were able to escape except for Bethany and a dog. This is why you hug your friends and family extra tight. It's sad, but you never know when their last day will be. In our 2nd spot, we have Cameron Boyce. On July 6, 2019, Disney fans were shocked when they heard that the talented child actor Cameron Boyce had passed away in his sleep. He was taken from us way too soon. He was only 20 when he passed, and he had a bright future ahead of him. Now, Cameron passed away in his sleep due to a seizure which was brought on from an ongoing medical condition for which he was being treated for. Still, no one saw this coming. This photo was one of the last photos ever taken of Cameron. A beautiful photo of a beautiful soul. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the armed robbery. On September 21st, 2009, Angela Escobar and Alex Santiago were sleeping peacefully when an armed robber entered their home and shot them both dead. The robber proceeded to grab some personal belongings before fleeing the scene of the crime. This is the last photo of Angelina. What a beautiful and innocent soul, taken far too soon. Eventually though, the killer was caught. His name is Christopher Doring. He was caught after taking a phone call in jail. On the recorded call, he admitted to shooting both Angelina and Alex, and then said, and I quote, "I have no sympathy at all, I can do that again. That don't bother me. That just makes me sick to my stomach. Rest in peace, Angelina and Alex."
Starting us off at number 10 is Scott Smith. Back in the 80s, one of the biggest bands was Canadian rock group Loverboy. I mean, Working for the Weekend is still played on radio stations today. So when one of the founding members, Scott Smith, seemingly vanished from reality, there were lots of questions. Back in November of 2000, after playing with his band in Vancouver at a benefit, Smith, along with 2 other friends and his girlfriend, set sail for Mexico on a 37-foot sailboat. As they were sailing down the coast, nearing San Francisco, the weather started to get rough and the waves started to get dangerous. Then one large wave, roughly 20 feet in size, knocked over Smith and sent him shooting off the deck of the vessel into the water. His friends on the boat were not hit, but were in shock about what they had just seen. They searched for the man overboard pole, but it had been taken by the waves along with their friend. Within 20 minutes, the Coast Guard helicopters arrived and dispatched 2 search boats that scoured for hundreds of miles to no avail. Still, his family were bound and determined to find him, so they even paid for a private search. Unfortunately, that too was fruitless. To this day, Smith's remains have never been uncovered, and no one knows if he truly did lose his life to the sea. Coming in at number 9, Daniel Lynn Lagerlof. While for North Americans he might not be the most well known on the list, once upon a time he was one of the most acclaimed directors and writers in Sweden. But his rise to stardom all came to a crashing halt in 2011 when Daniel was out scouting locations for a new thriller project and disappeared forever. Last anyone knew, Daniel had gone to the beautiful nature reserve of Chirpanan, a remote island all by himself. Now, why he went all by himself, no one knows, but according to his friends, he was simply going off to explore the island and planned to return. Tragically, he never did. To this day, his whereabouts are still a mystery, as no remains have ever been found, and no one knows what actually happened to him. There is one theory that he slipped and fell into the water, but again, no body has been found. Tragically, he has a wife and family, all of whom are hoping that he will still be found, but to this day, no investigations have proved successful. Next up at number 8 is Harold Holt. Nearly 2 years into his term as Australia's 17th Prime Minister, Harold Holt vanished into thin air. Back in December of 1967, Holt, who had always been an avid lover of the ocean, decided to set out for a little trip across with 4 other companions. However, on the way back to Portsea, Holt insisted that the group stop by a small remote beach for a quick swim after lunch. Holt, who was a strong swimmer, said that he knew the waters like the back of his hand and that he had done it many times before. But still, the weather was rough that day, and so only one of friends agreed to take the dip with him. His friend stayed close to shore, but Holt took a different approach and decided to venture out further, but seemingly got caught up in a wave and in the blink of an eye was gone. To this day, his body has never been found, although a 2005 investigation concluded that he could have drowned. This investigation, however, didn't stop many from theorizing that the leader had faked his own death or that he was some sort of secret CIA agent. While it does sound a little ridiculous at first, he's never been found, so I mean, the truth is still up for debate. Coming in at number 7 is Jim Sullivan. He might not have been the biggest name in his time, but Jim Sullivan definitely had a cult following back in the 60s and 70s, which made his disappearance all the more mysterious. In March of 1975, Sullivan was heading out to Nashville for what he hoped was gonna be his big break into the industry. But for whatever reason, Sullivan never made it to Tennessee. Instead, his car was found abandoned in the desert in New Mexico, and his wallet, clothes, and guitar were all found left in a nearby motel. And as for Sullivan, he was gone without a trace. Now, I don't know many musicians that would go anywhere for long periods of time without their guitar, a sentiment that every single one of Sullivan's friends and bandmates echoed. All of them explained that had he planned to vanish, that would have been the one thing he would take with with him. But here is where it gets a little extra strange. Sullivan's most well-known album was called UFO, and on the record were songs seemingly telling the story about driving into the desert and being abducted by aliens. And while of course there is no evidence to prove that that really happened, his body has never been found, and there's no evidence to prove it didn't either. I mean, honestly, who knows? Next up at number 6 is Bison Dele. Once a firecracker player for the NBA, at the age of 30, Bison, who had changed his name from Brian Williams, unexpectedly retired from the game and ran away to live a carefree, adventure-filled lifestyle in Lebanon and across the Mediterranean. From there, he moved on to Australia, where he began learning how to sail, and he bought a boat and named it Hakuna Matata. Then in July of 2002, he decided that he was going to set sail from Tahiti to Hawaii, and he invited his girlfriend as well as his older brother Miles Dabbard along on the trip with him. However, Bison never made it to Hawaii, and neither did his girlfriend or the captain of the boat. The only person who was ever seen again was his brother Miles, who returned to Tahiti alone on the boat a few weeks later on July 20th. Then, 2 months after their mysterious disappearance at sea, Miles was arrested in Phoenix trying to buy gold with one of his brother's checks, and was found using his brother's passport. Even more suspicious is that just 2 days prior, authorities had found the Hakuna Matata with its license plate removed, covered in what seemed to be patched up bullet holes, and registered under a different name. Many believed Miles was very jealous of his brother's success and money, and so him as well as the other 2 on the boat and threw their bodies into the ocean. But no bodies have ever been recovered, so it's never been able to be proven. Plus, the only person who could have given a first-hand account of what went down, Miles himself, overdosed on insulin and died in September of 2002, leaving the entire ordeal as one big mess. Number 5. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was a singer and actor. Dubbed the king of rock and roll, he is regarded as one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century. Having sold over 500 million records worldwide, Elvis is recognized as the best-selling solo music artist of all time by Guinness World Records. He was commercially successful in many genres, including pop, country, rhythm and blues, adult contemporary, and gospel. Elvis won 3 Grammy Awards, received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award at age 36, and has been inducted into multiple music halls of fame. He holds several records, including the most RIA certified gold and platinum album and the most albums charted on the Billboard 200. In 2018, Elvis was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, this photo of Elvis Presley was taken at Graceland in the early hours of August 16, 1977, having just visited the dentist. Later that day, Elvis had a heart attack and died in his bathroom, having had complications due to addiction and a weak heart resulting from this. He had suffered from a range of health issues brought on by his lifestyle, including addiction and an indulgent diet, and he passed away at age 42. Number 4. James Dean. James Dean was an American actor. He's best known for his roles in Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, and Giant. This photo of him from September 30th, 1955 at a gas station was taken the day that he died. James was a keen driver and he loved to race cars. He died when he crashed the Porsche in this photo, swerving to avoid an oncoming car. When James introduced himself to British actor Alec Guinness during an encounter in Hollywood, he asked him to take a look at the car. Alec thought the car appeared sinister and told Dean, "If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." Now, this happened on September 23rd, 1955, 7 days before James's death, which is just creepy. He died at age 24, and after his death, James became the first actor to receive a posthumous Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for his role in East of Eden, and upon receiving a second nomination for his role in Giant the following year, James became the only actor to have had 2 posthumous acting nominations. In 1999, the American Film Institute ranked him 18th Best Male Movie Star of the Golden Age Hollywood and AFI's 100 Years, 100 Stars list. Number 3. Princess Diana. Princess Diana was a member of the royal British family. She was the first wife of King Charles III, then Prince of Wales, and mother of Princes William and Harry. She was loved by the general public for her unconventional approach to charity work. Her work initially centered on children and the elderly, but she later became known for her involvement in two particular campaigns. One involved the social attitudes towards the acceptance of AIDS patients, and the other for the removal of landmines promoted through the International Red Cross. She also raised awareness and advocated for ways to help people affected by cancer and mental illness. She was constantly hounded by the paparazzi, which unfortunately resulted in her death. On August 31st, 1997, Diana was fatally injured in a car crash in the Poignant tunnel in Paris. This photo shows her car speeding away from the Ritz in Paris at around 12:20 a.m. as Princess Diana is looking back at the pursuing paparazzi. Seconds after the picture was taken, the car went into a tunnel where the driver lost control and crashed into a pillar. Diana was critically injured but died later that morning in the hospital. Now, because Diana was so loved and hated by the royals for being so loved, there's a conspiracy theory that the royal family planned for her to be killed, and I honestly believe this, which is so unfortunate. She passed away at the age of 36. Number 2. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Baptist minister and activist, one of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights movements from 1955. An African-American church leader and son of early civil rights activist and minister Martin Luther King Sr., King advanced civil rights for people of color in the United States through nonviolence and civil disobedience. Inspired by his Christian beliefs and the nonviolent activism of Gandhi, he led targeted nonviolent resistances against Jim Crow laws and other forms of discrimination. King participated in and led marches for the right to vote, desegregation, labor rights, and other civil rights. The photo on the left shows Martin Luther King Jr. standing with other civil rights leaders on a balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee on April 3, 1968. A day later, he was assassinated in approximately the same place by James Earl Ray. The photo on the right was taken directly after the assassination. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital. Now, there are also many conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination, as people believe it was a setup from the government. The assassination led to a nationwide wave of race riots in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, Louisville, Kansas City, and dozen other cities. He died at age 39. And coming in at number 1 is John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, often referred to as JFK, was an American politician who served as the 35th President of the United States from 1961 until 1963. He was the youngest person to assume the presidency by election and the youngest president at the end of his tenure. JFK served at the height of the Cold War and represented Massachusetts in both houses of the US Congress prior to his presidency. This photo of JF Kennedy was taken just before his assassination in Dallas on November 22, 1963. He was in Texas on a political trip to smooth over frictions in the Democratic Party between liberals and conservatives. Traveling in a presidential motorcade through downtown Dallas, he was assassinated, hit once in the back and once in the head. Kennedy was taken to Parkland Hospital for an emergency medical treatment, where he was pronounced dead 30 minutes later at 1 p.m. He died at age 46. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with Kennedy's assassination, which he denied, but Oswald was assassinated as well soon after. The assassination spawned numerous conspiracy theories. These theories alleged that the involvement of the CIA, the Mafia, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, Cuban Prime Minister Fidel Castro, the KGB, or some combination of these individuals and entities. The original FBI investigation and Warren Commission report, as well as an alleged benign CIA cover-up, have led to the claim that the federal government deliberately covered up crucial information in the aftermath of the assassination.